They said it was a family reunion, but it was just to split my lottery winnings. My name is Carol Peterson. I am 58 years old, and I have just done something I have dreamed of for years. I have retired. For 35 long years, my life has been a relentless grind in the chaotic, stressful, and sometimes tragic world of the emergency room. I am an ER nurse at Hennepin County Hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 35 years of witnessing the full range of human emotion, from the first cry to the last breath, from the deepest pain to the overwhelming joy of survival. I have held cold hands, wiped away tears of despair, raced against death on every shift. It has been in my blood, but it has also worn me down, leaving deep scars on my body and soul. It has taught me the value of every moment and the value of every dollar earned through sweat, tears, and silent sacrifice. My personal life is pretty simple. I divorced more than 15 years ago, a quiet but traumatic separation. Our only son, David, is now a grown man with a happy family and a stable career in Oregon. We are close, calling each other often, but he has his own life, and so do I. I live alone in a small house in suburban Nokomis, a modest 2-bedroom house that I've almost paid off. It's nothing special, but it's home, my safe haven from the suffocating stress of the hospital. My retirement plans were modest. With a small pension and years of savings, I plan to live a frugal life, perhaps working a few odd jobs to make ends meet. I dreamed of leisurely mornings without the blaring of an alarm clock, of tending my tiny backyard garden, of reading all the books on the shelves, and occasionally having enough money to fly to Oregon to visit David and the grandkids. A simple life, not demanding much. But then, 3 months ago, something amazing happened. Something I never dreamed of that completely upset my plans. It was a tiring Wednesday morning after a long and eventful night shift. On the way home, I stopped at my usual grocery store to buy some milk. As I sometimes do, I also bought a Mega Millions ticket. I've never really believed in these games of chance, but sometimes, after hours of facing the fragility of life, spending a few dollars on a glimmer of hope is a relief. I got home, threw the ticket on the kitchen table, and fell asleep because I was so tired. It wasn't until that afternoon, while I was making coffee, that I absent-mindedly opened my phone to scroll through the news and saw the announcement of the Mega Millions lottery results from the night before. There was a second prize winner in Minnesota. Curious, I picked up the ticket and compared it to the numbers on the screen. My heart started pounding. The numbers matched. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The only one missing was the yellow Mega Ball. But I remembered I'd selected the Mega Plier option, which multiplied the prize. I rubbed my eyes, double-checked, and double-checked. I couldn't believe it. The numbers on the crumpled, cheap ticket in my hand actually matched the second prize. After federal and state taxes, the net amount left was about $5 million. $5 million. A huge number, far beyond my imagination. I slumped down in my chair, the ticket in my hand shaking. Tears kept falling, not from sadness, but from shock, from a quiet but intense joy that was suffocating. It was not just money. It was freedom from the worries of daily bread. It was the guarantee of a comfortable old age that I had never dared to think of. It was like an unexpected reward, a belated reward for 35 years of dedication and exhausting toil. After claiming my prize as discreetly as possible and consulting with a trusted financial advisor to plan how to manage the money wisely, I did what my heart told me to do. I filed for retirement. I could finally put down the stethoscope, take off my nurse's uniform, and start living for myself. I wanted to keep my lottery win a secret for as long as possible, to avoid unnecessary complications. I told the good news to the only person I trusted completely, my son, David. He was so happy that he cried when he heard the news, but he also warned his mother to be very careful, because money can change everything, including relationships. David's advice turned out to be a terrifying prophecy. More reluctantly, I also informed my only remaining blood relatives in Minnesota, my brother Mark and sister Susan. I said only that I had some unexpected luck that had allowed me to retire earlier than I had planned. Their initial response over the phone was enthusiastic congratulations, but I sensed politeness and a hint of undisguised curiosity in their voices. They asked me about the specific amount of money I was receiving, but I deftly evaded the question. I hoped that would be the end of the story, but I was wrong. About a month after I officially left the hospital and began to get used to the slow pace of retirement, the phone rang. It was Susan. I was a little surprised because my sister and I don't often call each other unless there's something specific. Her voice on the other end of the line was unusually sweet, which made me a little nervous. "Carol, honey," she said, her voice excited. "I heard you retired. I'm so happy for you. You must be so relaxed. Hey, I think it's been a long time since we've all gotten together as a family. Why don't we all come over to my house for dinner this weekend, Saturday night? Mark and his wife are coming, and the kids too. Consider it a little retirement party, and also a celebration of, your unexpected good news. Just our family, getting together and being cozy." I was silent for a moment, trying to process the information. A cozy dinner at Susan's? With siblings, in-laws, and grandchildren? That was unusual. My family had never really been close in that cozy way. We got together on big holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, mostly out of obligation, and the atmosphere was usually awkward. Susan, the eldest sister, always had a hidden judgment of me. She thought I was dry, too focused on work, and neglected my family, especially after my divorce. Her husband, a regular office worker, was also often distant. My brother Mark was a different story. He owned a small auto repair shop with a job that sometimes went well, sometimes not. Mark always had a financial inferiority complex, often complained about his difficulties, and had a habit of secretly comparing his life to others, including mine, although in reality, my life was not much better than his. Mark's wife, Linda, was quite like her husband, quiet but attentive. They rarely, if ever, invited me to their home for a meal in such a friendly manner. Why the sudden change in attitude? Why the suspicious enthusiasm? Was it because they sensed something about my lottery winnings? Although I tried to keep it a secret, news of big lottery winners is hard to keep hidden in a small city like Minneapolis. Part of me, the part that yearned for family affection, wanted to believe in their sincerity. Maybe this was a chance to mend the rift, to have a better relationship with my siblings in my old age? But the other part, the rational part that had been tempered by years of dealing with all kinds of people in the emergency room, warned me. Life experience and fatigue with complicated relationships made me unable to not be vigilant. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to accept. "Yes, Susan, that sounds great. I'll come," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. I told myself not to be too suspicious, that maybe they really did just want to share in my joy. But deep down, I was still preparing myself for the unpleasantness. I would go in neutral, not boasting about the money, not making any promises. Just a normal family dinner. Or at least, I hoped. On Saturday night, I drove to Susan's house in Edina, a much more affluent and upscale neighborhood than my Nokomis neighborhood. As I sat behind the wheel, memories of past family gatherings flooded back. I remembered Susan's snide remarks about how I was staying single, how I didn't enjoy life. I remembered Linda's curious, prying questions about my nursing salary. I remembered Mark's indifference when I told him about my struggles at work. And most painfully, I remembered how I had struggled all alone when my mother was seriously ill. I was exhausted, working and caring for my mother, and money was tight. Susan and Mark only stopped by to check in, citing work and school, leaving me to struggle with my responsibilities alone. Did anyone think about family taking care of each other back then? Did anyone ask me, "Do you need any help?" No one. The contrast between my past indifference and my present fake enthusiasm only added to my unease as we slowly rolled down the tree-lined driveway leading to my sister's spacious home. My instincts told me that this cozy dinner might not be cozy at all. As soon as I stepped through the door, I was met with a wave of warmth that almost made me feel suffocated. Susan rushed out to hug me, her voice booming. "Oh, my dear sister, you look so fresh and radiant. Retirement sure is different." Her husband, Bill, smiled and shook my hand firmly. Mark and his wife, Linda, came over with similar polite compliments. "You look 10 years younger, Carol," Linda said, her eyes quickly scanning my newly purchased casual outfit. My grandchildren, Mark and Susan's children, are all grown up now, the oldest in his late 30s, the youngest in college, and they flock to me, asking me questions about my retirement plans, my plans for travel. This sudden interest feels unreal. Dinner was served at a long table covered with a white tablecloth. The food was more sumptuous than I had ever seen before. There was roast turkey, which I knew was expensive, and grilled salmon, which Susan had often found extravagant. People kept picking at my plate, asking if I was enjoying it, if I needed anything else. This extravagance only made me more wary. Throughout the meal, the conversation revolved around their financial woes, skillfully presented as casual complaints. Bill talked about how the volatile stock market had hurt their investments. Susan lamented the rising costs of home repairs. Mark talked endlessly about the poor state of his auto repair shop, the cutthroat competition, and the looming bank loans. Linda chided in on the rising cost of her youngest daughter's college tuition. The grandchildren chimed in, some talking about their mounting student loans, others complaining about the difficulty of finding steady, well-paying jobs. I sat listening, trying to keep a sympathetic face, but inside it was becoming increasingly clear what the real purpose of this dinner was. They were creating a difficult atmosphere, a picture of family struggle, to set the stage for something to come. And it was right after dinner, when we all moved into the living room to drink coffee and eat dessert. The air was quieter, a little tense with anticipation. Mark was the first to break the silence. He cleared his throat, trying to sound awkward, but his eyes were filled with anticipation. "Carol," he began, "I'm really happy for you. You're finally getting some rest after all those years of hard work at that hospital. You must have some great plans, big plans for that lucky break?" Sister Susan immediately continued, not giving me time to answer, her tone full of concern and responsibility. "That's right, Carol. You have the means now, completely different from before. And you know, our family has always had to love and support each other. Look, each of us has our own burdens and difficulties." At this point, I knew there was no turning back. The mask of cozy and caring had to fall. Susan put her coffee cup down on the table with a clack, attracting everyone's attention. She looked straight into my eyes, no longer any sweetness in her voice, replaced by cold calculation. "Carol, I think this, and I believe everyone here agrees. Your winning the lottery is a great fortune, a blessing from God. But that blessing is not just for you, it is for our whole family. We should consider it a common asset of the Peterson family." I was stunned. "Shared property?" Susan continued, her voice growing more and more firm. "Every one of us here is struggling. A small part of that money would be enough to help everyone cover urgent expenses, to make life a little easier. Mark needs to revive the store. My family needs to fix the roof urgently. Linda needs to pay for her youngest child's school fees. And the children need capital to start their own careers. It's only fair, only right, and only in the spirit of family support, isn't it?" Mark nodded like a robot, his eyes lighting up. Yes, I totally agree with you, Susan. I'm really stuck with business debt, Carol. Just a little bit from you, like $100,000, I could pay it off, buy some new equipment, and my store would be back on its feet." Mark's wife, Linda, quickly added, her voice full of pleading, "Our daughter Emily is going to college, Carol. Tuition and room and board are so expensive these days. We don't know where to turn. Can you help us out a little? Just $50,000 would be fine." Then Bill, Susan's husband, joined in, looking serious. "Our roof is leaking badly, and winter is coming, and we've been putting it off for a long time. $30,000 should be enough, Carol." The real nightmare began when the nephews started to speak up. Jason, Mark's eldest nephew, a young man of about 25 who looked quite carefree, grinned and said, "Aunt Carol, you're amazing. Can you give me some capital to open a game store? I have a great business idea, guaranteed to make a lot of money. It only takes about $20,000. The conversation quickly turned into a brazen and chaotic show of collective demands. They began to give specific numbers, dividing up my money as if it were their natural right. Susan even suggested that I should take out a large sum, about $1 million, to set up a family trust fund under her name, to ensure fairness and efficiency for everyone. I sat there, surrounded by eager, greedy faces, my ears ringing with the numbers, the demands. It felt like I was no longer Carol Peterson, their sister, their aunt, but just a mobile ATM that had just been filled with money. The hypocrisy, the undisguised greed was evident on every face, in every look in the eyes of what I had once naively called family. Not a single real question about how I felt about winning, about my worries, or my own plans. They only saw dollars. The disappointment and pain of betrayal quickly gave way to a cold, sharp anger. The blood of an ER nurse used to calmly facing crisis situations began to surge within me. I would not collapse. I would not let them walk all over me like this. I took a deep breath, trying to control my voice, which was shaking with anger. I stood up, looking at each of them in turn. "I think," I began, my voice perhaps a little hoarse but clear and determined. "I must have misheard something." I looked Susan straight in the eye, then Mark. "This is my money, my own fortune, after 35 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and my health. It is not and will never be family property for people to divide up like this." Silence fell over the room. The previously cheerful faces turned stunned and bewildered. I continued, my voice firmer. "I'm sorry to hear about your hardships, but I would never agree to share my money in such a blatant and unreasonable manner. I need time to think things through about how I want to use this money." Without waiting for them to react or argue further, I grabbed my bag. "Thanks for dinner," I said stiffly, without any emotion left. Then I turned and walked quickly out the door, leaving behind faces frozen in shock and perhaps anger that was beginning to brew. The cozy family gathering had officially ended in the worst way imaginable. I drove home in the thick darkness of Minneapolis, but my mind was confused and heavy. Tears rolled down my cheeks uncontrollably. But they were not tears of weakness, but tears of utter disappointment, of the pain of being betrayed so blatantly by my own blood relatives. The last illusion of family, of a warm family to rely on in old age, had completely collapsed after tonight. The feeling of loneliness and exploitation enveloped me, cold and bitter. The next few days passed in a heavy and gloomy mood. My mobile phone kept ringing with Susan and Mark, but I turned off the ringer and decided not to answer it. I needed space, needed quiet to calm down, to think clearly about what had happened and what I should do next. I sat alone in the quiet house, looking out at the small garden that was starting to winter, my heart full of confusion. In an effort to rid myself of negative thoughts, I decided to clean up my house and sort through old papers, things I had never had time for before. While rummaging through the filing cabinet in my small office, I pulled out an old, dusty cardboard box that had been forgotten for a long time. Inside were all sorts of miscellaneous papers, old utility bills, letters from friends I hadn't heard from in a long time, faded birthday cards. And then, tucked between a stack of old tax returns, I stumbled upon a slim document whose existence I had completely forgotten existed. It was paperwork related to a debt owed to my brother, Mark, from nearly a decade ago. As I looked more closely at the papers, the memory of a difficult time in my past suddenly came back to me with painful clarity. It wasn't a small loan of a few $100s like the other small loans Mark had asked me for. No, this was something much more serious. It was around 2014, and Mark's small auto repair shop was on the brink of total bankruptcy. He owed the bank nearly $50,000 and was facing foreclosure. I remember clearly the day Mark came to me, his face haggard, his eyes red. He cried, begged me to help, said that I was the last hope for him and his family. At that time, I was also in a very difficult situation. I had just gone through a costly divorce, had to shoulder the expenses, and start a new life alone. I had very little savings left, but seeing my brother in such a desperate situation, I could not help myself. Out of love for my brother, because I did not want to see my brother's family destroyed, I did something that was probably crazy at that time. I used up all my remaining savings, even had to shamelessly borrow a few $1,000s from a close friend to gather exactly $20,000 to give to Mark to cover the most urgent debts, helping him keep the store. Mark was extremely grateful. He scribbled out a simple loan note, stating the amount as $20,000, and signed it solemnly, promising that as soon as business stabilized, he would pay me back in monthly installments, principal and nominal interest. And he did. For the first 3 months or so, he wired me a few $100s a month, but then the payments became less frequent, and then stopped altogether. His business seemed to improve, he bought a new car, and the family went on vacation more often. About 2 years after that loan, during a chance encounter, I gently, tactfully reminded Mark about the remaining debt. His reaction left me dumbfounded and deeply hurt. Mark didn't seem to feel guilty or embarrassed. He chuckled and patted me on the shoulder as if I'd just told a bad joke. "Oh, Carol," he said, his tone mocking. "How many old dollars do you keep bringing up? I thought you'd give them to me. Who would ever be so calculating with their own brother? I thought you were just helping me out of brotherly love." When I told Susan about this, hoping she would speak up for me, she joined in with her brother. "That's right, Carol," Susan said in a patronizing tone. "Why are you so petty with Mark? He's your brother. Besides, you're single. You don't have anyone to take care of, so why keep so much money? What's wrong with helping your brother out a little?" Those words were like a knife stabbing into my heart. It turned out that in their eyes, my help was not appreciated, my kindness was taken for granted, and my financial independence became the reason for them to take advantage of me. Now, holding in my hand the old, crumpled loan note with Mark's clear signature, along with a few emails I had saved on my computer, emails I sent asking about debt repayment, and received evasive, even unpleasant answers from him. A bitter truth, but also a sharp weapon suddenly appeared before my eyes. Their brazen demands during dinner the night before were not just blind greed, but the height of hypocrisy. They had previously shrugged off and laughed at my help when I mentioned the old debt, but now that I had a much larger sum of money, they came to demand their rights in the name of family affection. The discovery of this evidence sent a jolt through me. It didn't lessen my grief, but it did ignite a new fire within me, a fire of righteous indignation and a determination to defend myself. I would not let them continue to despise and trample on me. The initial shock and hurt gradually subsided, giving way to a stronger feeling, determination. Finding Mark's loan note and old emails was more than a chance discovery. It was a stark reminder of the true nature of my relationship with my family. Silence and avoidance would not solve the problem. It would only make them more aggressive, further enforcing the illusion that they had control over my life and assets. I realized that I needed to confront them again, but this time things would be different. I would be proactive, in control, and I would come prepared. I decided to contact Mr. David Chen, the financial advisor who had helped me manage my lottery winnings. He was not only a good professional, but also a mature and trustworthy person. I called him, not only to discuss investment strategies, but also to share the dilemma I was facing with my family. I told him the whole story, from the tumultuous meeting dinner to the discovery of Mark's old debt. Mr. Chen listened attentively and sympathetically. "Ms. Peterson," he said after I finished, "I'm sorry you're going through this. Money, especially a large sum of money unexpectedly, tends to bring out the dark side of even the closest relationships. My advice to you right now is to be really tough and stand up for your rights." He stressed that I should never give any money to my family under pressure or out of guilt. "It's your money, your windfall. It's your choice how you use it," he said. To protect my assets long-term from unreasonable claims or potential future legal troubles, Mr. Chen suggested a solution that I found very sensible. setting up a professionally managed trust. This would not only give me control over my assets while I was alive, but would also ensure that my estate would be distributed exactly as I wished in the future. For example, only to my son David and the charities of my choosing, with no one else left out. As for how to deal with my current family, Mr. Chen advised me to have one last, frank, clear, and decisive talk with them. Present your point of view calmly and rationally. And if you have concrete evidence to back up your position, like your brother's old debt, that would be a huge advantage. Sometimes, the harsh truth is the best way to set necessary boundaries. Mr. Chen's advice only strengthened my resolve. I would no longer avoid it. I would take the initiative to call another meeting. But this time, I would choose the playing field and set the rules. I would prepare everything carefully. 1. Evidence. I will photocopy Mark's loan papers and print out emails related to previous failed debt collection attempts. These evidences will be my trump cards. 2. The message was clear. I would have my say. Short, direct, no nonsense. I would assert my absolute ownership of the money, reject any demands for a share, and point out the hypocrisy of their actions. 3. Neutral location. I won't meet them at someone's home. I need a neutral, public location that's private enough to avoid overreaction or drama. 4. Controlling my emotions. The most important thing is that I keep calm. I will present the facts, give my opinion rationally, and not let anger or hurt control my words and actions. The purpose of this meeting was not to retaliate or humiliate them, although deep down, I felt they deserved it. The purpose was to end this situation once and for all. I needed to draw a clear line, an impenetrable wall between my life and their greed. Only then could I truly find the peace I longed for. With a clear plan in mind and hard evidence in hand, I felt more prepared than ever. I was no longer a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. I would be the shepherd who decided the fate of this greedy flock. I composed a brief, formal, but firm email to both Susan and Mark, asking them to notify everyone who had been present at the fated dinner the night before. The email read as follows. Dear Mark and Susan, after thinking carefully about our conversation last Saturday evening, I realized that there were several issues that needed to be clarified one last time to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings in the future. I would like to invite everyone to a brief meeting this Saturday at 2:00 p.m. in the Nokomis Neighborhood Library Community Room. The full attendance of all those who attended the previous night's dinner is important. Please confirm everyone's attendance by the end of Thursday. Sincerely, Carol Peterson. I deliberately chose the Nokomis Neighborhood Library as the meeting place. It was a public place, familiar to me, but with a separate meeting room, ensuring the necessary privacy while minimizing the risk of them making noise or causing trouble like they would in a private home. The fact that I had taken the initiative to extend the invitation and set the time and place was also a way of implicitly asserting my position in the upcoming confrontation. As I expected, they quickly confirmed that they would be there in full. Perhaps curiosity or a glimmer of hope that I had rethought and would share the good fortune prompted them to come. On Saturday afternoon, I arrived at the conference room a few minutes early, ready to go. I placed a thin stack of documents, copies of the loan documents and emails, on the table in front of me. As my family filed in, I could feel the tension in the air. They sat down in the chairs across from me, their faces filled with anticipation, a mixture of worry and hope. Susan was the first to speak, still in that fake sweet tone. Carol, I'm glad you called this meeting. I know you're a sensible person. Family comes first, right? Surely you've thought carefully about everyone's proposal. I didn't let her take the lead. I looked straight into Susan's eyes, then glanced at Mark, Linda, Bill, and the grandchildren, who were sitting silently. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice calm and clear, echoing in the quiet conference room. I won't take up much of your time. I called this meeting to make my point one last time. I paused, letting my words carry weight. I understand that everyone here has their own difficulties in life, and I am truly sorry for that. However, I emphasized each word, I must reiterate something that everyone seems to have deliberately forgotten. The money I won is my own personal result. It is a guarantee for the rest of my life after 35 years of hard work, facing illness and death every day in the hospital. It is not and will never be the common property of this family. My eyes scanned each face. So the demands you made at dinner the other night were completely unacceptable. Not only were they unreasonable, they showed a profound lack of respect for me and what I've been through. I will not share my money like a cake out of greed or an unfounded sense of entitlement. The atmosphere in the room became heavy. I saw a few people start to fidget. I continued, my voice still even, but starting to gain some firmness. People talk about families helping each other, supporting each other in times of trouble. I picked up a copy from the document on the table, my eyes fixed on Mark, who was starting to sweat on his forehead. Speaking of helping each other, Mark, do you remember this paper? I slid a copy of the $20,000 loan note he'd signed nearly a decade ago toward him. It sat in the middle of the table, a silent accusation. And you probably remember these emails, I said, placing a few more printed emails beside it, emails where I'd asked about repayment and only been denied. Mark's face was as white as a sheet of paper, his lips moving, but no words came out. Susan gaped at the paper, then turned to look at her brother with disbelief and anger. The others began to whisper too, looking at Mark with questioning eyes. Their familial drama began to crack from within. I didn't let the silence last long. My voice was no longer calm, but had the added weight of years of pent-up anger. Nearly 10 years ago, when you were on the verge of losing everything, when you cried and begged me to save you, I did not hesitate to spend the last of my savings, even had to borrow more, to give you $20,000. That was a huge amount of money for me at the time. You promised to pay it back, but then you forgot that promise, and when I dared to mention the debt, you, and Susan too, I turned to look at her, laughed in my face, saying that I was calculating, that families shouldn't treat each other like that I didn't need so much money when I was single. I looked around the table, my eyes stopping at each person. And now, just because luck suddenly smiled on me, everyone gathered here, and in the name of family love, in the name of protection, demanded that I share hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars? Does everyone see the extreme hypocrisy in their actions? Silence filled the room, heavy and oppressive. No one dared to look me in the eye. Mark put his head down on the table. Susan was red in the face, her lips pressed together in anger and shame. The others either looked at the floor or out the window, trying to avoid the unpleasant truth before them. I will make my position clear one last time, I concluded, my voice firm. My financial decisions are my own. From this day forward, I will no longer allow anyone to pressure me, take advantage of my kindness, or be considerate. Our relationship, if it is to survive, must be built on mutual respect and honesty, not on the balance of my bank account. I will not fund anyone's lifestyle. I will not pay anyone's debts. I will not invest in unrealistic business ideas just because they are family. This money will be managed carefully and responsibly by me for my own future, for my son, David, and perhaps for charitable causes that I personally feel are meaningful. I stood up and gathered my documents. If everyone can accept this truth and want to maintain a true family relationship based on true feelings and not money, then I'm always willing. If not, I looked straight at them again. I think it's best we keep a necessary distance. This meeting is over. Without waiting another second, I turned and walked straight out of the conference room, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with humiliation, anger, and perhaps disillusionment. I knew that from this moment on, my relationship with them would never be the same again. But I had no regrets. I had done what I had to do. I had protected myself. The conference room door closed behind me, closing a chapter of weariness and disappointment in my life. Stepping out of the library, breathing in the fresh air of the weekend afternoon, I felt a strange sense of relief spread throughout my body. The invisible burden that I had been carrying on my shoulders for the past few weeks seemed to have disappeared. As I had predicted, the immediate aftermath of that confrontation was complete silence from my family. Mark and Susan, perhaps too embarrassed by the revelation, or too angry that their attempt to extort money had failed, cut off all contact. Not a single call, not a single text. They and their children kept their distance. At first, the silence was a little sad, a sense of loss of a kinship bond, even one that had long since rotted. But very quickly, that sadness was replaced by a sense of peace and freedom I had never known. No more annoying calls, no more demands or innuendos, no more having to brace myself against hypocrisy and greed. It was a necessary silence, a liberating break. I knew I had done the right thing. Even though I might have been seen as cold or calculating, I had stood up for myself, for my luck and my hard work. And that gave me a new inner strength, a confidence in myself that I had never felt before. To further protect my future, I followed Mr. Chen's advice and formally established a personal trust to manage all of my assets. This not only gave me peace of mind in terms of financial management, but also ensured that everything would be distributed according to my wishes in the future, avoiding unnecessary disputes. I also carefully updated my will, stating that my son, David, would be the sole beneficiary and that a portion of my assets would be donated to the Hennepin County Hospital benefit, where I had worked for 35 years, as a final tribute to the place that had given me my career and valuable life lessons. However, being tough on my family does not mean that I am stingy or insensitive. On the contrary, I want to prove that I know how to use money meaningfully. I just won't let it fall into the hands of those who take advantage of me. I quietly reached out and helped a former colleague who was having a hard time with medical expenses after an accident. I also decided to anonymously fund a small scholarship program at the local community college, specifically for nursing students with especially difficult circumstances. These acts of kindness from the heart bring me true joy and peace, more meaningful than any recognition from my family. No longer haunted by family troubles, I could finally fully enjoy the retirement I had always dreamed of. Every morning when I woke up without an alarm clock, I felt like I was reborn. I spent hours tending to the small garden behind the house, watching the seedlings grow day by day. I read all the books I had bought a long time ago, but had not had time to read. I signed up for a watercolor painting class at the community center, discovering a hidden artistic talent I never knew I had. I planned a detailed trip to Oregon to visit my son David's family, to play freely with my grandchildren. I also started reconnecting with old friends from high school and college, real friends, people who loved me for who I was, and not for the money I had. We met, had coffee, talked about old times, shared current joys and sorrows. My life suddenly became richer and more colorful. It has been a year or two since I decided to draw the final line with my family. My life is now a true harmony of peace and freedom. I am no longer haunted by their demands or judgments. Occasionally, a flash of sadness comes over me when I think about the broken relationship, but it is quickly replaced by deep gratitude for what I have: health, independence, the love of my children and grandchildren, and sincere friends. I have taken several dream trips, discovering new lands and cultures that I had only dared to see in books and newspapers before. Each trip has brought me valuable experiences, broadened my horizons, and enriched my soul. My relationship with David and his family has become increasingly close. We often video call, sharing all the joys and sorrows in life. The grandchildren are attached to their grandmother, and I'm happy to be able to spend quality time with them, something I could not do before because of my busy work schedule. Looking back, I have learned a profound lesson. Money has the power to reveal the true nature of people, even those we once trusted and loved the most. Sometimes, setting clear boundaries, even though it may cause pain and loss in the short term, is the only way to protect our peace, self-respect, and self-worth. True wealth is not in the numbers in our bank accounts, but in peace of mind, in sincere relationships built on a foundation of respect and selfless love. I lost a part of my biological family, but I found myself again and built a new life that was more meaningful and freer. And that is true wealth, the greatest prize that life has given me. Money has the incredible power to change relationships, especially within families. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation where family dynamics were completely upended by financial changes? How do you think one can deal with such sensitive situations while protecting oneself and maintaining one's sanity? Share your stories and thoughts.